The warrior doesn't perform, he prepares. There's a difference most men never see, the difference between the man who trains for the arena and the man who trains for the camera. One prepares for survival, the other performs for applause. One builds capability in darkness, the other builds image in light. And when the real test comes, when everything falls apart, only one is still standing. The warrior trains alone, not because he's antisocial, because the work requires silence, requires focus that spectators destroy, requires repetition that no audience would tolerate watching. 10,000 sword strikes, 10,000 hours of discipline, 10,000 moments of choosing pain over comfort. None of it impressive to watch, all of it essential to survive. Maximus didn't become Rome's greatest general by performing greatness. He became it by preparing for war while others prepared for parades. While politicians practiced speeches, he drilled with his men. While senators performed loyalty, he built it through shared suffering. While the empire watched theater, he mastered violence. And when Rome needed a warrior, they didn't call the performer. They called the man who was ready. This is what modern men forgot. They confused preparation with performance, confused training with content, confused building capability with building image. So they performed strength instead of developing it, performed discipline instead of living it, perform warrior mentality while avoiding every real test that would forge it. And they wonder why their lives collapse under pressure, why every setback feels catastrophic, why they break so easily. Because they built for the stage, not the arena, built for the camera, not the fight, built for validation, not for survival. And the difference between those two paths is the difference between performance and preparation, between image and substance, between breaking and standing. Performance asks one question: how does this look? Preparation asks another: will this hold? One optimizes for perception, the other optimizes for reality. One wants applause now, the other wants capability when it matters. And those two goals rarely align. What impresses an audience often builds nothing real. What builds something real often looks boring to watch. The warrior understands this. He doesn't train to impress. He trains to survive. Doesn't practice for content. Practices for competence. Doesn't perform rituals for audience. Performs repetitions for mastery. And that difference in motivation changes everything. Changes what he's willing to do, what he's willing to sacrifice, what he's willing to become. Most men train like they're creating highlight reels. Every workout a performance. Every discipline practice a photo opportunity. Every hard moment documented and posted. Not because the work requires it, because their identity does. They need proof, need validation, need confirmation that what they're doing matters. But that need reveals something. They're not training for themselves. They're training for the audience. And the moment that audience disappears, so does their discipline. The warrior trains different. Trains when no one sees. Trains when there's no reward. Trains when there's no validation coming. Because he's not building an image. He's building capability. And capability doesn't need witnesses. Doesn't need applause. Doesn't need confirmation. It either exists or it doesn't. And you find out which when everything goes wrong. Watch how men train today. Perfect form for the camera. Terrible form when alone. Maximum effort when recording. Minimum effort when private. Consistency when being watched. Inconsistency when anonymous. This reveals everything. They're not preparing for reality. They're performing for validation. And performance collapses the moment validation stops. But the man who prepares, who builds in silence, who maintains standards with no audience, that man discovers something powerful. His strength doesn't fluctuate with attention. His discipline doesn't depend on validation. His capability doesn't need proof, because he built it in darkness, tested it in private, forged it through repetition no one saw. And when the test comes, when the real moment arrives, he's ready. Not because he performed readiness, because he prepared for it. There's a specific kind of training most men avoid, the kind with no measurable progress, no visible gains, no obvious improvements, just repetition, just maintenance, just showing up day after day to do unremarkable work that builds nothing impressive. This is where warriors are made, in the boring middle, in the unsexy maintenance, in the relentless repetition that produces no content, generates no engagement, earns no applause. Because preparation isn't dramatic, it's methodical. Isn't exciting, it's repetitive. Isn't impressive, it's invisible. And most men can't handle that. Can't handle doing work that doesn't translate to social proof. Can't handle building strength no one will see. Can't handle becoming capable in ways that don't photograph well. So they quit, return to performance, return to the stage where at least they feel seen, feel validated, feel like they're making progress even when they're building nothing real. The warrior stays in that boring middle, embraces the unsexy repetition, accepts that most of his work will never be seen, never be celebrated, never be acknowledged, because he's not working for acknowledgement, he's working for capability, and capability is built in private, one unremarkable repetition at a time, one more set, one more drill, one more hour of practice that won't make good content but will make him better. This is the test most men fail, not the dramatic moment, the boring consistency, not the big sacrifice, the small discipline repeated daily, not the performance of strength, the private maintenance of it. And failing this test means everything else collapses, because you can't fake capability, can't perform your way through real pressure, can't content create your way out of actual danger. Either you prepared or you didn't. Either you built something real or you built an image, and reality doesn't care about your image. Maximus knew this before he entered the arena, knew every fight would reveal what he'd built in private, knew he couldn't fake competence when lives depended on skill, couldn't perform strength when real violence demanded actual capability. So he prepared, relentlessly, privately, without audience, without content, without validation, just work, just repetition, just the daily choice to maintain standards no one else would see. And when they threw him in the arena, when 50,000 people watched him fight for his life, he didn't need to perform. He was already ready, because he'd spent years preparing, not for the crowd, for survival, not for applause, for capability, not for the stage, for the arena. And that preparation, built in silence, carried him through hell. This is what separates warriors from performers. Warriors prepare for the worst. Performers prepare for the best. Warriors train for chaos. Performers train for cameras. Warriors build capability. Performers build image. And when reality hits, when everything falls apart, when the test comes without warning, only one is ready, because only one was actually preparing. Most men live their entire lives performing strength they don't have, performing discipline they don't maintain, performing readiness they never built, and they get away with it for years, for decades, because modern life rarely tests capability, rarely demands real strength, rarely exposes the gap between image and substance. So they think they're fine, think they're strong, think they're ready, until the test comes, until reality demands capability, until the performance stops working, and then they discover what they actually built. Nothing. The warrior lives different, never assumes the test won't come, never assumes his performance will be enough, never assumes he has time to prepare when it matters. So he prepares now, today, this hour, this moment, while there's no pressure, while there's no audience, while there's no validation, because he knows something performers don't. The arena doesn't announce itself. The test doesn't wait for readiness. Reality doesn't care if you're prepared. It comes when it comes, and either you're ready or you're not. This changes everything about how you train, how you live, how you build. Because if you know the test is coming but don't know when, you can't wait, can't perform your way through, can't fake capability when it matters. You have to build it now. Build it real, build it solid, build it tested. And that means embracing the boring work, the unsexy preparation, the private repetition, the maintenance no one celebrates. Because that's where capability lives, in the work no one sees. There's a violence to real preparation that performers can't stomach. Not physical violence, the violence of choosing difficult over comfortable, of maintaining discipline when every fiber wants rest, of showing up when no one's watching, of building when there's no reward. This internal violence, this daily war between who you are and who you should be, this is where warriors are forged. Not in dramatic moments, in quiet choices, not in performed discipline, in private maintenance, not on the stage, in the darkness. And most men avoid that violence. Choose comfort, choose easy, choose the path that doesn't hurt. And they think they're being smart, being efficient, being reasonable. But they're actually being weak, because strength isn't built through comfort. Capability isn't developed through easy. Readiness isn't earned through reasonable. It's forged through the violence of choosing hard when easy is available, choosing discipline when comfort is calling, choosing preparation when performance would be easier. The warrior embraces that violence, doesn't avoid it, doesn't negotiate with it, doesn't try to find easier paths. He walks straight into it, day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment. While everyone else performs strength, he's building it. While everyone else creates content, he's creating capability. While everyone else seeks validation, he's seeking mastery. And that difference, maintained over years, creates an unbridgeable gap between men who perform and men who prepare, between image and substance, between breaking and standing. When Commodus entered the arena, he came as performer, prepared for theater, expected choreography, wanted spectacle, because that's what he'd trained for his entire life. Performance, show, image. He'd spent years learning how to look strong without being strong, how to appear capable without building capability, how to perform warrior without becoming warrior, and he thought that would be enough. Thought image could substitute for substance. Thought performance could replace preparation. Maximus knew different, had spent his life preparing for chaos, for violence, for survival, not for cameras, for reality, not for applause, for capability. So when they faced each other, one was performing strength and the other was strength. One was acting warrior and the other was warrior. One had built image and the other had built substance. And reality revealed the difference, not through debate, through violence. And violence doesn't care about your image. This is the moment every man faces eventually. The moment when performance stops working, when image gets tested, when capability gets demanded, when reality doesn't accept substitutes. Some men face it in actual violence, some in business collapse, some in personal crisis, some in the quiet realization that they built nothing real. But every man faces it, the moment when preparation meets performance, when substance confronts image, when the arena demands truth. And in that moment, you discover what you actually built, not what you claimed, not what you performed, not what you posted, what you actually forged in private, through repetition, through discipline, through the boring work no one saw. Either you prepared or you didn't. Either you built capability or you built image. Either you're ready or you're not. And there's no third option, no negotiation, no explanation that changes reality. Just the truth, brutal, immediate, undeniable. The warrior prepares for this moment his entire life, not because he wants it, because he knows it's coming, knows reality eventually demands truth, knows performance eventually meets test, knows image eventually confronts substance. So he doesn't wait, doesn't hope, doesn't pretend, he prepares. Every day, every hour, every choice, building capability no one sees, developing strength no one validates, forging readiness no one applauds. Because when the moment comes when reality demands truth, he'll be ready. Not because he performed readiness, because he prepared for it. This is the work, not the dramatic sacrifice, the daily discipline, not the performed strength, the private maintenance, not the content, the capability, and this work never ends, never completes, never arrives at a point where you can stop, because capability requires maintenance, strength requires repetition, readiness requires constant preparation. The warrior who stops preparing stops being warrior, becomes performer, becomes image, becomes fragile. So the work continues, in silence, in darkness, without audience, without validation, without applause, just repetition, just discipline, just the daily choice to maintain standards when no one's watching, to build capability when no one's measuring, to prepare for tests that may never come, because this is what warriors do. Not perform, prepare, not seek validation, seek capability, not build image, build substance. And when the test comes, when reality demands truth, When the arena calls, the warrior is ready, not because he's special, not because he's gifted, not because he's lucky, because he prepared. While everyone else performed, he worked. While everyone else built image, he built capability. While everyone else sought applause, he sought mastery. And that difference, maintained through years of unsexy repetition in private darkness, makes him unbreakable. Not untouchable, unbreakable, because what he built wasn't for show, it was for survival. The performer breaks when the audience leaves. The warrior stands because he never needed one. That's not philosophy, that's reality. And reality doesn't care what you performed, only what you prepared.